So in today's video, we are going to be grading the Chiefs 2021 draft 1 year later. Now, before we get into the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and let's jump right into the video. So if we look at the guys that the Chiefs drafted last year, we have Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, Joshua Kando, Noah Gray, Cornell Powell, and Trey Smith. Now, obviously, not all those names were a hit in last year's draft, but I think it's pretty obvious reading off that list that the Chiefs had 3 really huge hits in last year's draft that turned out to be absolute superstars for the Kansas City Chiefs. So before we get into grading the actual draft, let's look and see what the Chiefs needed heading into last year's draft. And it's pretty obvious if we watch the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the position that the Chiefs needed to upgrade the most on was the offensive line. That offensive line was a disaster in the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, some people might not like the Chiefs freaking out and getting in panic mode because of one game. But if you ask me, that one game and the one time that the offensive line was a complete mess and it melted down was in the biggest game of the entire year. So I think organizations have the right to freak out, other than maybe, a quarterback. It kind of stinks if the quarterback has a bad Super Bowl, but like offensive line, when the entire unit was bad, I think especially when it is in the Super Bowl, if one unit is bad, I think it's right for a team to start freaking out. You look at the Cincinnati Bengals, they had every right to freak out. Look what they did this offseason, and they got better in their offensive line. It's what the Chiefs did 1 year ago. That line was an absolute mess. Brett Veach had every right to freak out and worry and panic about that offensive line, and what he did is he went out and improved the entire offensive line, because Mahomes in that Super Bowl, he had 0 time to throw in that game. It felt like every single play there was a Buccaneers defender in his face, literally every single play. It was just insane how little help Mahomes was getting. Like that, people for some reason think that game was on Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was the least of the worries for the Chiefs in that game. Obviously, the receivers in that game weren't helping either, but Mahomes having no time to throw wasn't golden either. It was a bad Super Bowl for the Chiefs offensive line. And it was so bad that we literally had Patrick Mahomes getting on like a SportsCenter top 10 plays for throwing incompletions. Mahomes was running around so much that he was throwing some of the greatest incompletions in the history of football. Like that's how many, he was making plays that nobody on the rest of the team was able to finish. He had no help from the offensive line, and receivers were dropping everything. So Mahomes, he played his guts out. He played his heart out in that game. So the offensive line was the main thing that the Chiefs needed to fix going into last year's draft, get Patrick Mahomes help, and upgrade the entire unit. So let's look at the protection that he got in last year's draft. First, we have Trey Smith, who was a 6th rounder, pick 226, and I think he was a steal. Now, obviously, he had a medical condition that kind of dropped his draft stock last year, but at the same time, him dropping to the 6th round and landing with the Kansas City Chiefs was perfect for them. He played every single offensive snap for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. Depending on which website you use, he was either 2nd or 4th in total offensive snaps played in the NFL. So he was a very reliable guy, and a guy as a rookie. Obviously, he didn't have the most perfect season as an offensive lineman, but as a rookie, I don't know if there's really much more you could have asked from him. He was very reliable. He was great in the run game, great in the pass game, but the pass game really is where Trey Smith struggled the most, allowing 55 pressures last year and giving up 4 sacks. So there is a whole bunch of room for Trey Smith to improve, but as a rookie and a unit that was so bad in the Super Bowl, it was a night and day difference. Obviously, we would take Trey Smith over anything that happened in that Super Bowl. And what's great about this is that Trey Smith has a bunch of time to improve and get better. He was only a rookie, and he had a great season last year. And this just shows there's a few things that he has to work on. And I think heading into next year, he'll do just that. He will get even better at protecting Mahomes and not giving up as many pressures as he did. Then you have the best center in all of football right now, the guy that the Chiefs are so glad that they have, and that is Creed Humphrey. He was picked in the 2nd round, pick number 63. This is just another guy that every team just completely missed out on. The fact that he went in the 2nd round is just mind-boggling to me, and the fact that every other team in the NFL missed out on him is just insane. He literally he went from a 2nd rounder to the best center in football. And that's not even me using PFF grades. He is a guy that got 0 respect last year. He gave up 1 sack and he only gave up 10 pressures all of last season. Reliable isn't the word. There's a better word than reliable. He was perfect for the Chiefs last year. He was the definition of a guy that we needed to protect Patrick Mahomes. He played 99% of the snaps for the Chiefs last season. Again, 1 sack, only 10 pressures, and he was just great at protecting in the pass game. He's great in the run game. Like, there's the one thing about this offensive line structure right now is if the Chiefs run the ball more, I think the offense will actually be even better because this line is built to run the football more than I think it is to pass it. While I think obviously it showed that this line in pass protection is really good and it was much better than the Super Bowl, this offensive line is definitely built to run the football. Creed Humphrey, just fantastic at blocking. I can't even think of the right words to describe how great Creed Humphrey was. He was a steal, and this is hindsight, but you're looking at a draft from a year later from that perspective. But the fact that he dropped to the Chiefs in the second round is just, it's insane to me, because the Chiefs didn't even have a first round pick last year, and they were able to land what turned out to be the best center in football, and a guy that got zero respect. Creed Humphrey didn't even get he didn't make the Pro Bowl, which makes absolutely no sense to me. This guy was the biggest Pro Bowl snub I've ever seen. I mean, offensive linemen don't really win the big awards, but you probably could have argued him possibly winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's how great he was. Yes, Jamar Chase as a receiver, more explosive, a position that gets talked about more, but you look at what Creed Humphrey did and the turnaround that offensive line had with Creed Humphrey as one of the guys that helped turn that offensive line around, got zero respect. And while with Trey Smith there's room to improve, well, with Creed Humphrey, the only thing we can ask him to do is maybe give up no sacks and only give up 5 pressures. That's how great Creed Humphrey was last year. But then you have the other guy that the Chiefs hit on in last year's draft that was an absolute stud, was Nick Bolton. He was a second round pick. He was the 58th pick. And honestly, in the next few years, I think the NFL, the media, the guys who talk the NFL the most might be talking about Nick Bolton as possibly one of the best linebackers in all of football. I think this guy was a stud in his first year in the NFL. The funny thing about Nick Bolton is he did not play near enough snaps last year. He barely cracked a decent percentage of snaps last year. I was looking through his Pro Football Reference page, and it was just mind-boggling how low of a percentage of snaps that Nick Bolton got last year in games, because he led the team in tackles last year, and they pulled him off the field at some of the dumbest times of the season last year, frustrating fans. Like Spags taking Nick Bolton off the field made no sense last year. That was some of the most mind-numbing decisions that Spags made last year. Nick Bolton was a star. Obviously, he struggles in the pass game a little bit, but you look what he did to that running game. He literally was around the ball in the run game literally every single play, it felt like. And you line him up with Willie Gay, those two may make one of the best linebacking duos in the entire NFL. That we may be talking about them as the best linebacking duo in the NFL, maybe this upcoming season or in a couple years from now. That's how good Nick Bolton is. Led the team with 112 tackles as a rookie, and as I mentioned, didn't even play all the snaps. So you give Nick Bolton a season where he's playing every single snap, he is going to be one of those ideal linebackers that is just a playmaker, a star, and is just all over the football field. He did it last year, and that was as a rookie. Now let him play the entire season, and let's see what Nick Bolton can do. So if we're looking at the guys that the Chiefs hit home runs on, and if we're giving the Chiefs an overall grade for last year's draft, you got to give it an A. You really have to give it an A, in my personal opinion. Now, obviously, you had some guys like Joshua Kando, Noah Gray, and Cornell Powell. Those guys really weren't a factor in most of these games. Powell didn't play a game. Noah Gray obviously playing second fiddle to Travis Kelce, and then Joshua Kando only playing 3 games. But the Chiefs literally hit home runs on 3 of their 6 draft picks, and I have no complaints about that. Now, maybe people want them to hit home runs on a higher percentage than that, but hitting at 50% of the draft picks that they had last year, a 50% clip, that is a very, very good draft. Again, not every player was a home run, but if you look at the players that the Chiefs did get, those 3 big names of Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, and Nick Bolton, those 3 guys are going to be stars in the future. So if you look at and then you look at what the Chiefs needed to improve on after the Super Bowl between them and the Buccaneers, and you look at how much better they got at those positions, especially offensive line. If you look at the draft from last year, honestly, and it might just be my bias and it might be me praising it a little bit too high, I don't know how you don't give the Chiefs draft from 2021 an A. But that was my grade for the Chiefs 2021 draft. 1 year later, what would you grade the Chiefs 2021 draft? Give me your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next one.